Hi, and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne, and this is where we talk about marketing, data, and philosophy. This week, how do you stay close to your customers when you're high up the corporate ladder? Let me give you a problem. The people who know your customers the best are the people who talk to them the most often. And this can be, if you're in retail, people who work at the checkout, people who stock the shelves, people who talk to your customers, your sales team, your support team. They know your customers, they know the trends, they know the common questions that they get asked on a day-to-day basis. And you, as somebody who's higher in the organization, you are most often relying on some sort of report about these things at an aggregate level to understand them and to make decisions on that. But you're not having that face-to-face interaction with customers on a day-to-day basis. And so there's always a little bit of a gap in your knowledge. Now, what do a lot of companies do to try and solve this? What happens is their senior level team, they go to the shop floor sporadically, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, and they work on a till and they hope that that's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't. And it doesn't for a couple of reasons. The first is that often these trips are not about that. They're not about getting close to customers. They're about optics. They're about saying, hey, I'm one of you. I worked on a till for 4 hours. I know your life. I can communicate with you. I'm one of the team and all of this kind of stuff, which isn't really true. The second is that they don't happen often enough. They're very sporadic, maybe once or twice a year. And so because they're sporadic, what happens is that they will speak to a customer or they have a particular interaction and it becomes like a case study for the next half of a year. This isn't a problem. I spoke to Tim about it and he's validated maybe something that I already thought, and therefore it's not a problem. The third thing is that if the head of your company is coming down to your retail store, you're quite likely to have done extra cleaning to put your best staff on that particular day. And maybe to even arrange things so it looks more favorable to you as a store manager than you normally would have. And so it doesn't necessarily relate to real life. I think the CEO of L'Oreal famously would arrange these store visits, and they were unaware that they was like meticulously planned out, and marketing were buying ad space for posters on their routes, and retailers were being briefed to sort of put more L'Oreal stuff out before the visit and take away some of their competitors. And so it was a comforting version of the truth, but not necessarily the truth. And I think that's probably true for a lot of companies and a lot of CEOs when they visit the stores, that it's not really reflecting on reality. And so they're always getting a little bit of a gap. The problem is that the higher up you are, the more money you're earning. And so naturally, you start to understand the problems of what will most likely be your core customers, unless they are in the high bracket on a day-to-day basis. And it creates a problem where people are empirical in their thinking. I always think this is 100% true. You believe what you see, most people. And so if you are higher up in a company, probably most of your friends are. And so when things happen like the cost of living crisis, you are less affected. Your wallet is less affected, or it's affected maybe a lot slower than somebody who's on a lower income. And so you think, well, this is a problem. I can see that milk has gone up by 30p, but I don't care about 30p. And so I'm not as affected. I'm not seeing it as a huge problem where somebody else, that might be a huge problem to them. 30p a week really adds up. And even in a company, if you work for an airline, you're flying luxury because it's free. It's one of the perks of your job. And so you're not having the experience of flying economy, which is the bulk of your customer base. And so you instantly lose touch. You become in a little bubble. So how can we solve this problem apart from trying as best as we can to interact with our customers more often, to really take site visits seriously, to do them regularly, and to not brief people that we're going to go there? So the first problem that I really see is like short-termism. Everything's been in flux the last couple of years, and so there's not a long-term thinking around framing your business around the customer and the customer's needs. And I want to say that again: framing your business around the customer isn't done. Instead, we just say, oh, okay, what's the feedback, and we'll try and improve. But too often, we need to do more than that. We need to change our services. We need to change our pricing. Maybe we need to change the way that work is delivered to some degree. And while people say, oh, we're a very customer-centric business, when you get down to it, okay, customers are saying that this is too expensive to them right now. Do we want to knock off 20%? No, we don't want to do that. That affects bottom line. Try and get some customers that can afford us, change our strategy that way. And so you're not really addressing the problems. Banks are the perfect example of this. Customers are saying that, when we open at 9:15 and then we close at 4, that if they're working, they can't really come and see us, and that their only opportunity to come to the bank is at lunchtime, and they're complaining about it. Should we change? No. We don't want to change that. There's a reason we do that, and it's to comply with this, and we've always done it that way. And so when online banking happens and these challenger brands come, they instantly disrupt that market because the banks had the opportunity, they had the feedback there for tens of 20, 30 years. Surely people were feeding that back, but they did not want to change. That was the way things had always been done. They didn't want to frame their business around customer needs. And so challenger banks were able to come in and do that. So the first problem is short-termism, only thinking about the problems of today and not having a long-term commitment to framing your business around the customer. The second thing is just the most natural thing in the world, which is the wrong boss. So we see our boss every day. Our boss is somebody who works down the hall. We're adjusting to what they want, what their ideas are. And there's normally a good reason behind that. But we don't really have that same level of interaction with Pam on the street or Jim or these customers that are right in front of us, because we're dealing with Jim. And so what Jim wants tends to take a priority in our minds to some degree more than what a customer might want. And we're always going to frame our problems in line with what's easiest to us as an employee who works for a company, rather than thinking that our customer is a boss. And so I think it's a really good idea to have some level of customer interaction, a board level, a decision level, have a seat that represents the customer in all of your decision making. I think is it Amazon that famously has an empty seat, and that's supposed to represent the customer or something along those lines? But instead of an empty seat, fill that seat with actual customers and say, hey, what do you think about this? And not just from a market research point of view, from a strategic business point of view. People who maybe are customers, but they also have a profession that can help you in some sort of way. And there's been loads of people, especially if you're a bigger brand, who will happily do that and say, well, I look at it from this point of view as a customer, and I look at it this point of view professionally. The third thing is like granular processes. Processes are really difficult to map out, and it's so easy to get lost in the detail, to see the pie chart of 100 different scenarios that can happen. And so it becomes really hard to affect those processes because you're down in the weeds and you're not really seeing where things are going wrong for customers. And you're looking for needle in a haystack rather than just going, what are the aggregate levels of that? What are the themes that are coming out of that? Okay, they're saying that they didn't get the right help from customer support. So let's look at the agents. Oh, it must be the agent's problem. Well, actually, are we asking the right questions to get paired with the right agencies? We're only asking them one question. Was it easy for them to access that help in the first place? And so you've got to, start at the bottom, but work your way back up, and think about things at a less granular level in terms of processing. Because if you stop to think about all the different scenarios and how somebody was dealt with, there's a million different things, you'll easily get lost. It will take a long time to do that. And while you've done that, your business has changed. So try and think of the most simple solution in terms of processes. And last but not least is just a data problem. So not having your data in one place. And when it comes to customer feedback and data, there's a few challenges. So one is that what I see in a lot of organizations is they have some sort of customer support system. It could be something like Zendesk. And then that information sits in this silo and it doesn't sit with the CRM data. And the reason is that there's a lot of like different information associated with customer support that maybe isn't super useful for sales teams and marketing teams that need to deal with customers. And so those teams are sitting in silo and they need to be brought together in a way that makes common sense. So a really common scenario I see is that marketing or sales are trying to upsell a customer something, and they don't realize that this customer recently had a support issue, and so they're actually more likely to churn, or this is not the time to sell them something. And so you need to find a way that maybe you don't need to see the whole ticket and the log of everything, but maybe a flag back to your CRM that says, hey, this person contacted support, so their churn risk has increased by 10%. This is the way that we communicate with them in that situation, and maybe you want to reach out again and make sure that they're happy, not just with the support they got, but with us as a business. So make sure that your customer service isn't sitting in a silo, and that all that data is aggregated into a data warehouse, and you can model it however you want at that point of view. And then obviously start thinking about your wider data. So your Google reviews, your reviews on Trustpilot, things like this. The problem I see often here is that obviously some of those platforms are anonymous in nature. Sometimes people use different emails, or they use different names, or their partner posts an angry post, and so it's really hard to attribute them on a one-to-one basis, or you have to use some sort of fuzzy logic to do so. But it's possible in a lot of cases, so try and make the effort to do that. If you can see that somebody left a good response after you did a particular promotion, or they've left a negative response after you've left a bad intervention, and it makes it a lot clearer. And still you can aggregate that data as well, so you can see a fuller picture on your customer interactions. And so when you're thinking about things from a C-level leadership, one is be mindful of the fact that, are you in tune with your customers and their day-to-day life, and are you hearing enough of their stories? Number two is make sure that you go and speak to them on a regular basis. Don't just rely on market research or data. And number three is make sure that everything's in one place and you can easily understand it when it comes to your customers. This has been Gin with Gwynne. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe and tune in next week for more thoughts and opinions.